We just got back to the US from our trip to Paris, and I don't want to brag, but we knocked it out of the park this time. Our packing was on point. We stayed in really nice places that were centralized to all the attractions. We hit museums with a sort of precision that you rarely see outside of military operations. In fact, I picked up this Monet outside the Louvre. The guy selling it said it was an original, so I got that going for me. Now, one thing that made this trip run really smoothly was that we decided to spend some money. We weren't wasteful, but if spending extra money led to some convenience, like a nicer hotel in a more central location, or an Uber because we were tired and we didn't want to fight the train, or even going to the really nice restaurant that's right in front of us rather than trying to Google some less expensive option. And of course, we're fortunate that we're a dual income family and have the budget for that. I'm really lucky that Pam has 2 jobs. So if you watch this video with the idea that I was going to give you how much it cost and where we went and just break it down on a spreadsheet, I'll put that at the end of the video. There'll be chapters, and you can just jump to the last chapter if that's what you really want. But I have to warn you, you're going to miss stories like my 20-euro bowl of soup, how I went on a 10-day vacation with 5 pair of underwear, or the Van Gogh painting of Donald Trump. I also have to warn you that YouTube analytics shows me when people skip ahead and ignore all my other content. So I'll know if you chose to jump to those chapters and hurt my feelings. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about packing. So we always pack with these packing cubes. You know, we separate our clothing out and we put them in these cubes, and it's very organized and very straightforward. We took it to the next level this time though, because Pam's friend loaned us these vacuum bags, and vacuum, you suck all the air out and it compresses the bag, give you even more space. So I took my packing cubes, put them in a vacuum bag, sucked all the air out. It was amazing. Once I put my bag in the suitcase, I still had like 50% more. This is like one of those little roller ones. Also, if you're going on a 10-day trip, you don't need 10 pair of socks and 10 pair of underwear and 10 t-shirts. And the secret to how you get away with just a few pair of socks and a few t-shirts is that these countries have laundromats. Now, I'm not trying to sound like Mitt Romney here. I don't really know how laundromats work in the USA because I haven't been to one since the 90s, but I remember you put quarters in the machine and run it. They have like a central kiosk. You're like, oh, I want the soap. You punch in 40, put your money in, and you get a box of soap. Oh, I want to use dryer 23. You put in 23, put your clothes in the dryer, it dries. Maybe that's how all laundromats work nowadays. I don't know. But that's how it worked. It was very straightforward, very easy. Don't bring 10 days worth of clothes. Bring 5 days worth of clothes and just do some laundry. Now for the flight itself, we flew from Jacksonville to Paris, then caught a commuter flight, if you will, from Paris to Madrid, and then flew from Madrid back to Jacksonville. Oh, here's a fun little romantic story just to show you how much Pam likes me. Now, on international flight, drinks are free. Alcoholic drinks are free. So when the person came through, I said, give me a double rum and Coke. See, the secret is to order a double. Then you get 2 bottles, and even if you don't want 2 bottles, stick one in your pocket for later, right? Pam said, yeah, me too. I'll have a double rum and Coke. And I was a little surprised because Pam doesn't drink. And I said, Pumpkin, you're drinking alcohol? And she said, no, I got them for you. That's the kind of woman to marry right there. Anyway, we eventually landed in Charles de Gaulle Airport. Going through customs was quick and very straightforward. They had these machines, and I didn't get a picture of it because it's kind of chaotic. You put your passport on it, and then it takes a picture of you, and then doors open, and then you're like, is that it? Or is there more? Coming out of customs into the main terminal, I immediately saw a statue of a naked person. I thought it'd be funny if every naked statue or painting, I put a little ding counter, ding, 2, 3, 4, but that number soon would have reached the 1,000, so I skipped on that little idea. Now, after traveling, of course, you're tired. You're 6 hours out of whack. It was only noon in Paris. We wanted to, stay up as late as we can to get our schedule, to get our brains in sync with the new time zone. But we didn't want to push ourselves. So my sister-in-law wisely got us tickets on a boat that would drive us up and down the river through Paris. And we just could sit there and see everything. And it was really nice, but we didn't have to think too much. It was kind of funny because we went down to the river where they said the boat was. There were a lot of boats there. Now, in hindsight, it was pretty obvious. There's this big building that had the name of the company on it, and we should have gone straight there, but we're like looking at all these boats and we're like, which one's ours? Anyway, we eventually make it to this building, and I show them the ticket. I'm like, is this where I'm supposed to be? And they're like, well, of course, because did you see the big name on the building? We're like, oh, okay, sorry. And we go through the turnstile, and there's a big platform, and there's no boat. And we're like, huh, that's weird. So we're just like hanging out, yeah, good trip. This is a pretty place. This lady comes out, and she says, do you want to get on the boat? And we're like, yeah. And she goes, well, it's over there. And we look, and like if you go down and around, there's a big boat full of people, and they're all kind of looking at us like, are you coming or not? Because you're holding up the work. So we're like, oh, sorry. Once again, we're in the country for 3 hours, and we've already screwed up several times. And we got on the boat. We went up and down, and you get to see everything. You get to see the Louvre and Notre Dame and Eiffel Tower and several bridges you go under. And when it was over, we all agreed it was really good. And then someone sheepishly said, I kind of fell asleep. And then we all admitted that somewhere along the line we fell asleep. I woke up when my head, hit my chest, and I was like, what? So after that, we went back to the hotel, which was very nice. The rooms were small but nice. And then we went out to dinner, the first dinner in Paris. We were on Rue Cler, which now I know. Now I'm talking like I know everything about Paris. I don't know anything about Paris, but I know that Rue Cler is this famous street that has lots of restaurants and vendors, and it's kind of a tourist thing. And so we went in, and the guy's like, do you have reservations? And we said, do we need reservations? And then he's rolling his eyes and he's clucking his tongue. And we're like, hey, sorry, dude, we'll come back tomorrow. We'll get some reservations. Of course, we said that all in English, so I don't know if he understood. And he goes, and he's, making a kind of a performance. But he's like, no, we'll find you a table. They had lots of tables. They're all mushed together, of course. And you have to sit next to other people, but that's very European, I guess. And we're looking at the menu. It's a little steep, and it's late, and we're tired, and we don't really want to eat too much. But I saw this Parmesan soup, which sounded really good. So I ordered that. That is the €20 bowl of soup, which I'll get to in a minute. My sister-in-law ordered some pate. It was really funny. They brought out this jar of pickles that was like this big. I guess because you put pickles on the pate. I don't know. I forget what Pam had. But my brother-in-law had some sort of pork, and he was raving. He's like, this pork is fantastic. And I'm like, yeah, all the food in Paris is ridiculously fantastic. I'm not a foodie. In fact, I prefer a cold slice of Costco pizza, just eating it over the sink, right? But the food in Paris is so good. It's all true. And I had this bowl of soup. It's Parmesan vegetarian soup or something. $20. No, €20. It was the best vegetable soup I've ever had, and I'm not even joking. And you're like, wow, Tom, €20 for a bowl of soup? Well, I got news for you, Mr. American. Let's look at this menu from Five Guys. A crappy cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke cost more than my bowl of soup, and I was in Paris with the ambiance, and it tasted fantastic. Best I've ever had. So I have no regrets about my €20 bowl of soup. We got up the next morning to get some breakfast, keeping in mind our new philosophy of spending money if it makes sense, if it makes things convenient and it's good quality. And the restaurant around the corner had a breakfast. It was €13.50 for breakfast. And I thought that was a lot of money because I have no idea what it costs to go out. I never go out. You viewers know that my breakfast usually consists of drip coffee from my broken Cuisinart machine. So I did a little research. I went out to Panera's website and said, what could I get for about €13.50, which is probably like $15. And I found out that Panera, you could walk up to the kiosk and order yourself a bagel with some sort of honey butter. You could get a paper cup with some drip coffee in it, and you could get yourself a plastic container of pasteurized milk, probably shipped in on a container ship from Argentina. So let's compare that to what we got here in Paris. You can see I have some fresh squeezed orange juice, cafe creme that they just made in the espresso machine, croissant, some toast, jam in a little cute glass jar, not the plastic thing you get from Panera where you got to like try to peel the top off of it. Some butter, which apparently is certified. I don't know quite what that means, but it seems to matter. And all this is served on a real plate with real silverware, with a real person who took my order, sitting in a real restaurant like civilized people. So sure, it was a couple bucks more, but for the price of this Panera meal in a brown bag and a paper coffee cup with plastic silverware, if you remember to pick it up, and maybe a scratch off ticket, you can get this meal in Paris. I gotta say, these French are really onto something here. I think we're doing things wrong in America. After breakfast, we went to the d'Orsay Museum, which is my favorite museum. And as I noted, our hotel is, you know, right in the middle, so we were able to walk over to it. Now, I kind of screwed up a little bit because you can buy tickets ahead of time for a particular time, a particular entrance time to go into the museum. We didn't do that. We just showed up. And so we had to go stand in the aisle of shame, people without tickets. But it wasn't that bad. It only took like 10 minutes to get through and into the museum. Now, like I just said, this is my favorite museum. I was a little miffed when I walked in and I saw them trying to take credit for the Statue of Liberty, which is obviously an American thing. But otherwise, this museum's great. You can stand right in front of all the painting and sculptures that you've seen your whole life on refrigerator magnets and tote bags and people's Facebook inspirational posts. You have Degas, Renoir, Van Gogh. And I mean, these paintings are just right there. It's like, oh, I know that painting. I almost bought a mouse pad with that painting on it. One thing I did do for the first time is go out on the museum's terrace. I didn't even know it was there. It's kind of off the food court, if you will, the cafeteria. Now, it's a small space. There's not many seats, and you have to wait in line. But when you do get a table, you're just sitting there having a drink, looking over the Seine River in Paris at one of the most famous museums in the world. Anyway, back in the museum, there's some Van Goghs. And a crazy little known fact is that Van Gogh actually painted a picture of Donald Trump. I mean, it's not really, but it does look like something you'd see on Truth Social. There's two works of this museum that are my favorite. The first is The Luncheon on the Grass. And I think this painting has an amusing story because they had this like really big art show. Whoever was in charge of the art world in Paris back in the 1800s, they were kind of like the gatekeepers. They're like, this is good art and this is bad art. And this painting was considered inappropriate for the art show. But it got its own showing. There's so many paintings rejected that they set up a whole different thing. It was called, and I think I'm pronouncing this right, the Salon des Refusés, which is basically paintings that were refusing. So anyway, this painting caused a great scandal. And you might say, well, I see there's a naked woman, but every painting is a naked woman. But no, every painting with a naked woman, the woman is either from mythology, or she represents truth or purity, or as you'll see in the next work I like, it just represents someone from a faraway land, so it's okay that they're naked. But this is just a woman sitting in the park with two guys who are dressed in suits. Anyway, the art world lost their mind. This is a really big scandal. I think the whole thing is quite a story. But as scandalous as this painting is, it has nothing on the painting that's in the Prado. Francisco de Goya was like, hold my beer. Let me show you how to really scandalize things. But I'll show you that in the Madrid section. Anyway, the next work I really like is called The Nubians. And it's this big statue of a life and death struggle against a giant crocodile. You see this guy wrestling with the crocodile and you're like, yeah, Florida man. You'll also notice that, once again, the people have no clothes on, and that gets back to what I said earlier. They're not goddesses or metaphors. They're just people from a faraway place, so it's okay that they're naked. So that kind of sums up this day in Paris. We had this fantastic breakfast that makes Panera look like a hostage situation. And then, a museum where you can just get your selfie taken with a Renoir or a Monet. Oh, I didn't show you the picture of the Monet. Here it is. Honestly, I would choose this museum over the Louvre if I had to choose one or the other. But As you will see, the next day we went to the Louvre. So let's talk about that. The Louvre is enormous. It's way bigger than anything you could do in a day or even a week. And really, it's overwhelming. It is just packed with priceless masterpieces, ancient artifacts, statues, rooms within rooms, wings within wings. You're walking through looking at these paintings that have shaped Western history, and then you look up and you're like, even the ceilings are masterpieces. But there's only so much of the Louvre that your brain can take before it starts to shut down. So here is my serious advice. You have to have a plan. Going into the Louvre and thinking, well, we'll just figure it out when we get there. That's like going to Costco the day before Thanksgiving without a shopping list. It's like, we'll just figure it out. It's not possible. Now, if there's a particular era or artist that you know you want to see, like ancient Egypt, Greek pottery, a famous painter. I mean, if you know that's what you want to see, then the Louvre probably have a whole wing of it, and you are set. But if you're the casual traveler who just wants to see the Louvre, you have to have a plan. So let me tell you what our plan was. Our plan was to hit 5 or 6 major works of art, like the top 5, right? And if you're thinking, I'm not going to fly all the way across the ocean and get a ticket to the Louvre just to see 5 things, you're going to see way more than 5 things on your way to seeing those things. You are going to pass so many priceless masterpieces and amazing works of art that you're not even going to see them anymore. It's all going to be a blur. Now, here's another piece of advice. There's going to be a lot of lines, and there's going to be a lot of people. So when you get your ticket, it's going to have a particular time that you're supposed to show up. We took the metro there. It was just a little bit further than we wanted to walk. So we took the metro there. You come right out of the metro stop to the Louvre. You walk in. There's a giant glass pyramid, huge courtyard. You'll see these signs, the 9:30, the 10 o'clock, the 10:30 line. Get there like 20 or 30 minutes early. Find the line. If you can't find the line, because it is confusing, there are thousands of people milling about. There are a lot of people who speak your language who can point you in the right direction. Now, the thing is, you're going to stand in a line, show your ticket, and get into the Louvre. And you're going to find yourself in this huge open area underneath the pyramid. You're not in the museum yet. That's how big this place is. So now you got your tickets. Go get the audio guide. I'll actually pay for it ahead of time. Save yourself some trouble. Get the audio guide, because that is really helpful in understanding what you're looking at and getting around. And then you're going to get into another line to get into the museum. So here are the top things we went to see. When you finally get into the museum, there's these big staircases, and at the top is the winged victory of Samanthras, which is the goddess Nike. It's this enormous marble statue from 2 BC that they found on some island somewhere. From there, we went to see the Mona Lisa, because, of course, you have to see the Mona Lisa. Well, we went to the room that the Mona Lisa was in, because we're not going to go up front. There's this throng of people with their cell phones like it's a Taylor Swift concert, like, ooh. So we stood in the back of the room and said, yep, that's the Mona Lisa. But right behind you is the biggest painting in the entire museum, the wedding at Cana, where it shows Jesus turning the water into wine. It's this enormous painting with like 130 different people in it. And no one sees it, because the Mona Lisa is this way and the painting's behind you. From there, we went to see the Raft of Medusa, which is this enormous, tragic, dramatic painting of a bunch of shipwrecked sailors. And next to that is Liberty Leading the People, which, if you don't know what that is, you know what that is. You've seen it before. After that, we went to see the Venus de Milo, which was kind of a surprise to me, because I thought that was in the Vatican. So I was like, Venus de Milo is here? So we went and saw that. And the last thing we saw was Psyche Revived by Cupid's Kiss, which is this marble statue. Of course, it's amazing. Like everything in the museum is amazing. The story is that Psyche had fallen into this death-like slumber, and Cupid revives her with a kiss. But I was noticing that Cupid was getting a little handsy, and I said to Pam, I'm like, oh, look at Cupid. He's stealing my move. And she gave me this look like I can't describe, but it wasn't a good look. I did not like her giving me that look. That was enough of the Louvre. After that, we wanted to go back to the hotel and rest. And like I said, it was a long walk, but riding the metro seemed like even more trouble. So we walked back and enjoyed Paris, got some pictures along the way. We rested up. That evening, we went to Notre Dame. We took the metro down to Notre Dame, and it was closed at that point, but we really didn't want to go in. We just wanted to see it and, got our picture. And from there, my sister-in-law said, let's go to the Latin Quarter. And it was really wild because we're just walking down the street, normal street, and she goes, turn left here down this alley. And I turned left down the alley, and it was some sort of Harry Potter thing, because all of a sudden you're in this like little section of town with little streets, and it's all lit up, and there's all this energy and liveliness and restaurants and shops, music, people trying to wave you into the restaurant. We had dinner there, and the restaurant had a lot of character and ambiance, but the food, not the best. At that point, it was late, and using that idea that we're going to spend a little more money if it makes our life easier rather than trying to figure out the train back, we just grabbed an Uber and went back because we had to rest up. The next day was the Eiffel Tower. To sound like a broken record, the Eiffel Tower was within walking distance, so we walked over there. I think this is where we got some of the funnest pictures of the trip. And like the Louvre, there's a particular time on your ticket that says that's when you get in. So we stood in line, of course, because we're always standing in line. And we got in, but that doesn't get you into the Eiffel Tower. That gets you into the area under the Eiffel Tower. You have to find the line for the elevator. And I got to tell you, that was pretty confusing. There seemed to be several lines at each base, each pillar of the tower. And I couldn't make sense of it. And I was trying to ask people, but eventually we just picked one and went with it and hoped for the best, and it worked out. And eventually we found ourselves at the very top because we paid, you have to pay for a ticket to get here, but you have to pay for another ticket to get up here. And my sister-in-law even paid for champagne when we got to the top, which was kind of silly and maybe overpriced, but it was really cool to get some champagne. And as you would expect, it is amazing. We were lucky we had great weather this entire trip. But eventually you come back down because you can only do so much. And we took the stairs down rather than fight the elevator. Well, we took the elevator from here to here, but then we took the stairs down. Gravity helps with that, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Once we got down to the first floor, we got off our feet and were relaxing and taking in the view and trying to figure out what to do next. And we decided that it really didn't matter as long as we got off our feet. So we went out for some crepes, and we found a nice restaurant and put in our order, and the owner comes out with the crepes and she's about to set it on fire. And I was like, whoa, YouTube content, hold up. And of course she didn't speak English, but she probably figured out what I was up to when I said YouTube and was fumbling with my camera. So poor woman, I know she was rolling her eyes and was tired of such social media nonsense, but she let me get the shot, and here you go, setting those crepes on fire. And then it was our final night in Paris, so we decided to go to a fancy restaurant. And this wasn't a Michelin star restaurant, but it was I think it's pronounced Bib Gourmand, which means the Michelin travel guide recognizes it as being a really good restaurant. And of course, the food was fantastic. Everything was good. And here's something I didn't expect I'd be saying. And I know this is an unusual thing to say, but the asparagus was the best asparagus I've ever had in my life. And you're like, Tom, that's kind of crazy. But I shared it with the other people, and they're like, yes, Tom, that actually is the best asparagus we've ever had in our life. And then came the dessert. They shared a creme brulee, and I got this chocolate caramel tart. Dare I say it, the best dessert I've ever had in my life. It was so good. I think my life is complete. It was so good that I was involuntarily dancing as I was eating it. And that was our last night in Paris. The next morning, we got up and got ready to go to Madrid. So it's the final day in Paris, and we have some time before our flight takes off to Madrid. So Pam does some final shopping. We had seen clothes, over the last few days in the stores, like this pair of pants, which turned out to be 600 euros, or this shirt, which was 175 euros. So we had a good laugh about that, and I think we got a refrigerator magnet or something instead. But I did have time to do my laundry, and it really is a good feeling to start off the second leg of the trip with a suitcase full of clean clothes. So we got to the airport and we went to our gate, and it said, your plane is departing from gate 9 through 15. And we didn't know what that meant. There's this area with gates 9 through 15. So we kind of just sat there and watched the crowd and did what they did. And at one point, everybody started queuing up at gate 10, I think. So we did too. Turned out to be the right thing to do. They put us on a bus, drove us out to the tarmac, where you went up the stairs and boarded the plane. And it was a 2 or 3 hour uneventful flight to Madrid. Now, when picking a hotel in Madrid, I knew where I wanted to be. The reason we went to Madrid was to go to the Madrid Open tennis tournament. So I wanted a hotel that was near a metro line that would take me straight there. But I also wanted to be near like the Puerta del Sol, Plaza Mayor area, just because that's the center of Madrid, right? So after doing some research and looking at reviews, it turned out the best hotel for the best price was the Hard Rock Hotel of Madrid. Now, I'll be honest, that did not sound very Madrid to me. And I was a bit skeptical. I was picturing this cheesy 90s rock and roll decor with neon lights. But I was wrong. The Hard Rock Hotel is really good. It's a great location with big rooms, a comfortable bed. It's very clean. Prices are reasonable. They have a restaurant there that serves a reasonably priced breakfast. Even the drinks at the bar are comparable to what you'd get if you went out on the town. So yeah, thumbs up for the Hard Rock Hotel. Anyway, we got in late Tuesday, so we just had dinner and went to sleep. The tournament was Thursday and Friday, so that gave us all of Wednesday. So on Wednesday, we did the touristy things. We went to the Puerta del Sol and the Plaza Mayor, and we went shopping. There's a little place north, I think it's called Calle de Fuencarral, but I might be goofing that up. Here's a map. That's where we went shopping. So we spent the day doing that. But what Pam and I did Wednesday evening is we went to the Prado Museum, because at 6 p.m. it's free admission. They're open from 6 to 8, so it's a small window, but it's free admission. And of course, there's quite a line when there's free admission, but the line went kind of quickly. It took like maybe 20 or 25 minutes to get in. And much like the Louvre, you have to have a plan, especially with a short window, but there's so much to see. So I had a plan. One thing to note is that in this museum, you are not allowed to take pictures. And they're very serious about it. If the guard sees you taking a picture, and they'll see you, you will be sternly talked to in Spanish, and then they will make you delete those pictures off your phone. They're not joking around. I saw them bust 3 people while I was there. So anyway, the first painting I wanted to see was Las Meninas by Velázquez. So this painting is the most famous painting in Spain, and it is the most written about and studied painting in Western art. For hundreds of years, people have been writing about this. Artists have been studying it and copying it and arguing about it. I'm not an art student, and I can't really explain in this video how far down the rabbit hole it goes, but this painting is said to blur our perception of what's real and what's an illusion. So if you want to go on a deep dive on that one, it's quite a trip. Another thing about Velázquez is that he was the curator for the royal family's art collection. So when the Prado was built, a lot of those paintings were put into the Prado. So you can kind of say that he curated a lot of the paintings. Just fun historical fact. The next one I wanted to see was the Garden of Earthly Delights. It's 3 paintings by a medieval painter who must have been on something, because it depicts paradise, earth, and hell, and it is so weird. I just kept looking at it, finding more and more weirdness, until Pam said, Tom, other people want to see the painting. I was like right up on it. It's a very strange painting, and a very famous strange painting, so check it out. But the last one, and the most interesting, is the one I alluded to earlier, the Nude Maja. So the story behind this painting by Goya is that it was kept in a private room because it was kind of, scandalous. This very powerful man kept it in his private collection in a room set aside that only a few of his best friends could gain access to. Anyway, this guy eventually fell from power, and his private collection became public, and people had questions about why he would have such obscene paintings. It was actually the Spanish Inquisition. Yep, that Spanish Inquisition. They didn't have torture devices, but they were still around, and they had questions for Goya. They're like, what is up with this painting? Because remember, if you're going to have a nude painting, it's going to be mythology or an allegory or someone from a far off land, like the Nubians we saw fighting the crocodile. Maja, at least in those times, Maja meant kind of streetwise, swagger, stylish, working class woman from Madrid. So it wasn't someone from far away. This was a Madrid woman, completely naked, looking right at the camera, saying, what are you going to do about it? And that was completely out of bounds. So the Spanish Inquisition called Goya up and said, explain yourself. And Goya responded to the Inquisition like, things are like that. But because he was very rich and powerful and well connected, he got away with it. It's a tale as old as time. The next 2 days we spent at the tennis tournament, and not much to say about that. If you're into tennis, it's a great tournament because you get to go to Madrid. The prices are extremely reasonable. The stadiums are smaller, so it's a more intimate setting. You're not way up in the rafters like the US Open. Food and drink prices are reasonable. I mean, it's just a great tournament. So we went to the tournament on Thursday and Friday. And Friday night, our last night, we still hadn't got our churros. So Pam and I set off late at night, like it was midnight, which means Madrid was wide awake, right? It was really buzzing. And we went to the most famous churro place in all the world, the Chocolatería San Ginés, I believe is how you pronounce it. Even though it was 12 or 12:30, there was still a line to get churros. But we got the churros, we got a table. They were everything we hoped they would be, and it made the trip complete. And that was about it. The next morning we got up, went to the airport, had an uneventful flight home, and now we're just trying to get our internal clocks reset to Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so here's the breakdown of expenses. And if you jumped ahead to this chapter and skipped everything else, well, you missed some great stories about the Prado, the Madrid Open, scandalous Goya paintings, and midnight churros. But here's a spreadsheet. Here's the expenses and the total cost of our trip. We can see that the total cost for Pam and me was $6,130. Now, this might not be to the nearest penny because there might be a couple Uber trips my in-laws paid for and, metro tickets and those sort of things. But let's see where the 6,000 figure comes from. So Jack's to Europe and back. I say to Europe because we flew into Paris and flew out of Madrid. We flew Delta, Maine, and it was $1,177 for each person. And then the flight from Paris to Madrid was $120 for each person. So that's where those values come from. Staying at the hotel in Paris was $1,114, and the Hard Rock was almost $1,000. So for two people, these are the prices for two people. To go to the Louvre was this much. That includes the audiobook. The Musée d'Orsay was that. Eiffel Tower was kind of steep, coming in at $71 a person. This was the boat cruise. If you're interested in the name, this is what the name of the company was. I can't pretend to pronounce that. These were the prices for the tickets, and if you know anything about tennis tournaments, these prices are ridiculously inexpensive for a tennis tournament, so that's awesome. I had to buy a SIM card for my phone. Now, this is all the meals. Once again, I'm sure that some fell through the cracks. I didn't get every cup of coffee and every croissant, but for the most part, any of the big meals that showed up on my credit card, this is how much it cost for Pam and me. And then these were the Uber charges for Pam and me. We pulled off a 8 or 9 day vacation, depending on how you count it. We flew out of here on, let me pull up my calendar. We flew out of here on the 16th and we came back on the 25th. So we flew out on the 16th, we got there on the 17th, and we flew back on the 25th. If there's any questions on any of this, put it in the comments and I will try to answer them as best I can.